Single dad janitor ignored the guard's orders, but he was the only one who could save her. The fluorescent lights of Lincoln Memorial Hospital flickered at 2:47 a.m. when Marcus Hayes heard the scream. It wasn't the usual chaos of the emergency room or the hurried footsteps of night shift nurses. This was different, raw, desperate, the kind of sound that cuts through years of carefully built emotional walls and reaches straight into your soul. Marcus had been pushing his cleaning cart down the third-floor corridor, the same route he'd taken every night for the past 6 years. His hands were rough from industrial cleaners, his back ached from mopping endless floors, and his eyes burned from exhaustion. In 4 hours, he'd need to pick up his daughter Emma from his mother's house, get her ready for school, and somehow stay awake through another parent-teacher conference. Being a single dad and a night janitor meant living in a constant state of tired, but it was honest work, and it kept a roof over their heads. The scream came again, louder this time, followed by a crash. Marcus's heart hammered as he moved toward the sound, his worn sneakers squeaking against the freshly mopped linoleum. It was coming from the administrative wing, a section that was supposed to be empty at this hour, locked down and off limits to everyone except security personnel. "Please, somebody help me." He rounded the corner and saw her, a young woman, maybe mid-20s, collapsed against the wall near the stairwell. Her hospital gown was soaked with blood, and her face was pale as moonlight. She clutched her side, pressing trembling fingers against what looked like a surgical wound that had torn open. "Ma'am, are you?" Marcus started forward, but a sharp voice cut him off. "Hey, Hayes." Security guard Phil Morrison appeared from the opposite corridor, his hand resting on his radio. "Back away from her, now." Marcus froze, his gaze darting between Morrison and the woman who was now crying, her body shaking violently. "She's bleeding," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "She needs help." "She's a psych patient," Morrison snapped, moving closer. "Schizophrenic. Attacked a nurse earlier today. She's dangerous, and you're not authorized to be in this wing. Step back, or I'm writing you up." The woman's eyes met Marcus's then, and he saw something that Morrison clearly couldn't, or wouldn't, see. Not violence, not madness, terror, pure, unadulterated terror. "Please," she whispered, blood seeping through her fingers. "Please don't let him. I'm not crazy. I'm not. He's going to." "Shut up, Rebecca," Morrison barked, his hand now gripping his baton. "You're going back to the psych ward where you belong." Something about Morrison's tone sent ice down Marcus's spine. He'd worked at Lincoln Memorial long enough to know the protocols, long enough to know that bleeding patients went to the ER first, psych ward second. Always. And he'd worked around Morrison long enough to know the guard had a reputation, whispers of roughness with patients, complaints that were mysteriously dismissed, a general cruelty that seemed to intensify when no one else was watching. Marcus looked at the woman, Rebecca, and made a decision that would either cost him his job or save a life. Maybe both. "I'm calling a code," Marcus said, reaching for the emergency phone on the wall. "Don't you dare," Morrison growled, stepping between Marcus and the phone. "This is security business. You're just the janitor. Do your job and get out of here." "My job is to keep people safe," Marcus replied quietly. "And she's bleeding out." Morrison's face flushed red. "Last warning, Hayes. Walk away, or you're fired." Marcus thought of Emma. He thought of the bills stacked on his kitchen counter, the rent due in 5 days, the fact that jobs weren't easy to come by for a 38-year-old man with only a GED and a gap in his resume from when his wife Sarah died and he'd stayed home to care for their infant daughter. He thought about all the reasons he should turn around and push his cart in the other direction. Then he looked at Rebecca again and saw Sarah's eyes. Not literally, of course. Sarah had green eyes, and Rebecca's were brown. But he saw the same desperation Sarah had in the hospital when the cancer was winning, when she was trying to make the nurses understand that something was wrong, that the pain medication wasn't working, that she needed help and nobody was listening. Marcus stepped past Morrison and hit the emergency call button. All hell broke loose. Morrison grabbed Marcus's shoulder, spinning him around. "You stupid." But Marcus was faster than his tired appearance suggested. Years of hauling equipment and chasing after an energetic 7-year-old had kept him strong. He twisted free and positioned himself between Morrison and Rebecca. "Touch her again, and I'm not the only one losing a job tonight," Marcus said, his voice low and firm. The emergency alarm blared through the corridor. Within seconds, footsteps thundered toward them, real medical staff, nurses and doctors, not just security. Dr. Rachel Chen arrived first, taking one look at Rebecca's condition and immediately dropping to her knees beside her. "Get me a gurney, now, she's hemorrhaging." "Dr. Chen," Morrison started, "this patient is supposed to be. Saving her life is what she's supposed to be, drive." Chen cut him off sharply. "Marcus, help me apply pressure here." Marcus didn't hesitate. He knelt beside Rebecca, his hands joining the doctor's as they worked to slow the bleeding. Rebecca's eyes fluttered, and she grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "The pills," she whispered. The pills aren't right. He's switching them." "Morrison, check his locker, please." "I'm not crazy. I'm not." Before Marcus could respond, the gurney arrived, and Rebecca was whisked away to emergency surgery. Morrison had vanished. 3 hours later, Marcus sat in the hospital administrator's office, expecting termination papers. Instead, he found himself across from Dr. Chen and 2 police detectives. "Mr. Hayes," Detective Williams said, sliding a plastic evidence bag across the desk. "We found these in Phil Morrison's locker. Sedatives, antipsychotics, pills that had been altered." Rebecca Martinez wasn't paranoid, she was being systematically drugged. Morrison had been caught selling prescription medications 6 years ago at another facility but somehow ended up here. "We think he'd been targeting psych patients because their reports would be dismissed as delusions." Marcus felt sick. How many others were investigating? But Rebecca might not have survived if you hadn't intervened. She'd already lost dangerous amounts of blood, and Morrison was clearly trying to keep her from getting help. Detective Williams leaned forward. "You saved her life by ignoring orders." Dr. Chen smiled softly. "You also kept your job. In fact, the hospital board wants to offer you a position as a patient advocate. Someone who can move through the hospital and listen to patients others might dismiss." Interested, Marcus thought about Emma, about the stability they desperately needed, about doing work that actually mattered. "Yes," he said simply. 6 months later, Marcus stood outside Rebecca's apartment with Emma by his side, holding a homemade card covered in glitter and crayon drawings. Rebecca opened the door, healthy and whole, her eyes bright with life. "You came," she said, smiling. "You invited us to your nursing school graduation party," Marcus replied. "Wouldn't miss it." As Emma ran inside to join the celebration, Rebecca caught Marcus's arm. "You believed me when no one else would. You saw me when I was invisible. Thank you for that." Marcus nodded, emotion thick in his throat. "Sometimes the most important thing we can do is just pay attention. Really see people." That night, tucking Emma into bed, she looked up at him with serious eyes. "Daddy, are you a hero?" Marcus kissed her forehead. "No, sweetheart, I just did what anyone should do. I helped someone who needed it." But as Emma drifted off to sleep, Marcus realized that maybe that's what heroism really was. Not grand gestures or fearless acts, but simply choosing kindness when it costs you something, choosing to see humanity when others look away, choosing to act when staying silent would be easier. Sometimes the janitor sees what the king misses. Sometimes the ignored know more than the powerful. And sometimes, the quiet act of one tired father refusing to walk away changes everything.